Everyone laughed when she walked in. But when the will was read, her name was called for everything. The shock was unbelievable. The truth was even more devastating. What's behind the inheritance? What is she about to expose? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's continue. Rain blurred the windshield as Lydia Johnson's old sedan coughed up the driveway, 2 hours behind schedule. The funeral had been yesterday, a day she'd spent with children who actually wanted her there, reading stories about heroes who stayed invisible. She hadn't attended her father's service. Richard Johnson, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd graced magazine covers and boardroom tables, but hadn't wanted her in any. The estate spread before her like a monument to everything she'd never been part of. Glass, steel, and ambition made it solid. Lydia cut the engine and breathed, watching rain blur the sharp edges of her father's world. The message had come at dawn. Will reading. 10 a.m. Your presence is needed. Needed? After years of being optional, she was suddenly needed. Lydia stared at the mansion through the wet and blurred windshield, and memory pulled her backward. She was 7 years old again, standing in this same driveway, her small hand clutching her mother's. Her father had been leaving for Tokyo, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other. She'd made him a card, carefully coloring every letter. "I love you, Daddy." He'd glanced at it, smiled absently, and handed it to his assistant. "Keep this somewhere," he'd said, already moving toward the waiting car. Her mother had squeezed her hand. "He's just busy, baby. He loves you." But being busy became a pattern. Missed birthdays became a tradition. Her high school graduation came and went without him. When she'd gotten her master's degree in social work, she'd sent him an invitation. He'd sent flowers with a card signed by his secretary. The day she'd opened the community center, the proudest moment of her life, she'd called to tell him. His voicemail had been full. Eventually, Lydia had stopped trying. She'd built a life where she mattered, where children's faces lit up when she walked in, where her work changed lives in small, meaningful ways. She'd made peace with being the daughter her father didn't want. Lydia grabbed her bag and ran through the rain, already rehearsing her apology for being late to a family gathering she'd never wanted to attend. The door opened before she knocked. Marcus Webb, her father's attorney, stood in the entrance, all professional courtesy and hidden assessment. "Ms. Johnson, please come in. We're ready to begin." No judgment for her lateness. Just quiet inevitability. The conference room stretched vast, looking empty despite 5 people waiting inside. Pamela, her stepmother, sat composed in her grief, though Lydia noticed the tissue in her hand was unwrinkled, not wet. Greg, her half-brother, radiated impatience, his whole body language screaming, "Let's get this over with." What were they so eager about? Lydia wondered. Pamela's darting eyes, avoiding Lydia. She had a sneer on her face, but Lydia was used to Pamela's attitude. She looked away, with thinned, pressed lips. Lydia had been 12 when her father married Pamela, bringing Greg into their lives like a replacement son, the heir Richard had always wanted. Greg was polished, ambitious, and everything Lydia wasn't. Within months, family dinners stopped including her. Business trips became father-son bonding. By the time she turned 16, Lydia had become a ghost in her own family. "Nice of you to show up," Greg said now, his voice carrying that familiar edge. Not quite hostile. Not quite welcoming. Exactly the tone he'd used for 20 years. "It wasn't a surprise that you don't keep to time. You would always say you forgot." Lydia took the empty seat, looking underdressed in her thrift store blazer. "I didn't forget," she muttered under her breath. She caught Pamela's eyes flicking over her now. From her worn-out shoes, her damp, natural hair, and her simple clothing. The same assessment she'd endured at every rare family gathering. Not quite good enough. Not quite one of them, because she was the only one with brown skin. Aside from her mother, who didn't even have a voice anymore in the Johnsons' mansion. Marcus settled across from them, opening his portfolio with the care of someone handling explosives. "Let's proceed," he said and cleared his throat, shifting their focus to him. The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows. Lydia found herself studying the space, this shrine to her father's success. Awards lined the walls. Photos of Richard shaking hands with presidents, tech innovators, and industry titans. In every image, he looked powerful, confident, and complete. She wasn't in any of the photographs. She was always behind. Her tainted skin earned her a place away from the cameras. "The last will of Richard Marcus Johnson," Marcus began, his voice formal, practiced. "Executed on the 15th of August, 2024, in sound mind and clear judgment." The will reading unfolded like a script she'd already read. Greg got the Palo Alto properties and a seat on the board of directors, assets worth tens of millions. Pamela got the Manhattan penthouse and a trust fund generating enough money to live lavishly forever. 2 business associates received stock options that would set them up for life. Lydia waited, already at peace with receiving little. She'd built a life that didn't need her father's approval. Maybe she'd get some books. Maybe a small keepsake. Maybe nothing, which would honestly be fine. She'd stopped needing him years ago, though somewhere deep within her said otherwise, as a chill ran up her spine. She shifted on her seat, drawing Pamela's attention to her for a second with a disdainful look. Then Marcus said her name. "To Lydia Elizabeth Johnson, I leave the entirety of my remaining empire." The words hung in the air like smoke. Pamela's jaw dropped, and Greg's eyes bulged out of their sockets. Time seemed to stop. Lydia felt her breath catch, felt every eye in the room turn toward her like searchlights. "This includes the Johnson's estate, Johnson Technologies, and all subsidiary holdings," Marcus continued, his voice steady, "the family estate and all associated properties, and my complete investment portfolio. No restrictions. No conditions. Effective immediately." Lydia felt the room tilt. Her grip on the edge of the table tightened. The conference table, the windows, the faces around her, all tilting like the world had shifted on its axis. Johnson Technologies. Her father's legacy. The company he'd built from nothing, now worth hundreds of billions. The estate. The fortune. Everything. Additionally, Marcus continued into the shocked silence, Ms. Johnson is granted sole access to Private Vault 847 at First Union Bank. She has 14 days to claim its contents. "This is a mistake." Greg's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and jagged. "It has to be. I mean, that man was on painkillers, dude." He barked, jolting to his feet. But Marcus shook his head, calm in the face of Greg's raging anger. "Your father spent months preparing this will. It was sudden, but he was in his right senses." Pamela's composure cracked like thin ice. She shook her head, standing up abruptly, her chair scraping against polished wood. "She doesn't even understand business. She works with slum black children, not board members." Her face twisted in disgust. Lydia's head snapped towards her, triggered by her words. She never wanted to hear anything from her children. "I work with the future. Those kids are the leaders of tomorrow." Lydia heard herself say, surprised by her own steady voice. Pamela's brows raised. She never expected Lydia to speak back. "You dare to. We'll contest this." Greg cut in. "Obviously. Dad couldn't have been thinking clearly when he wrote that." "That's your right," Marcus acknowledged. "Though I should mention that your father underwent extensive evaluation by 3 independent medical professionals in the months before his death. All confirmed his complete mental competency." Greg went mute. Pamela stared at Marcus like he'd written the will, and she was about to lash out at him. Lydia sat numb, staring into space. "If there are no further questions," Marcus began, but his hand was already moving, reaching into his portfolio. "One more thing." He picked a sealed envelope, extending it toward Lydia. "For you. From your father." Lydia took it with shaky hands, feeling every eye tracking her movement. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive-looking, sealed with red wax that bore her father's initials. The room felt suddenly suffocating. She needed air. Distance from the shock radiating from Greg and Pamela, from the weight of what had just happened. Staggering, she made her way outside. The rain had become a drizzle. Lydia sat in her car, hands trembling as she broke the seal. A key fell into her palm, silver and worn. Beneath it, a note in handwriting she recognized from birthday cards he'd sent but never signed with love. Lydia, I know you don't understand. Soon you will. The truth I couldn't tell you lives in these walls. You were always enough for me. I'm sorry I couldn't say it while I lived. Your father. She held the key, feeling its weight, its promise, its mystery. For 38 years, she'd been the daughter on the margins, the one who didn't fit, who'd chosen compassion over competition. She'd thought she was forgotten, erased from her father's story like those missing photos on his office wall. The key felt heavier than it should have. Lydia sat in her car, staring at her father's words until they blurred with tears. The truth I couldn't tell you lives in these walls? What was the truth? And why leave it all for after he was gone? A sharp rap on her window made her jump. Greg stood in the drizzle, his expensive suit already darkening with moisture. His face was a storm. She lowered the window halfway. We need to talk, he stated. Not a request. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Lydia replied, running her hand through her hair. I don't care what you think is a good idea. His voice was tight. The kind of anger that came from years of suppressing it. You walk in here after 20 years of playing saint at your little community center, and suddenly you're the heir to everything? It's absurd. I didn't ask for this, Greg. No, you just showed up and took it. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the window. You know nothing about running a company. Nothing about the tech industry. Nothing about the responsibilities that come with that kind of wealth. Dad knew that. So either he lost his mind, or someone convinced him to do something incredibly stupid. Marcus said he was evaluated. 3 doctors confirmed he was competent. Doctors can be bought. Greg straightened, running a hand through his wet hair. We're contesting the will. I hope you understand that. This isn't just personal. It's legal. But the look in his eyes said it was absolutely personal. He walked away before she could respond, leaving wet footprints on the concrete. Lydia sat there, hands shaking. She'd expected Greg to be upset, but the venom in his voice shook something loose inside her. This wasn't just about wealth. This was about identity, about who deserved to be a Johnson, about years of unspoken hierarchies suddenly overturned. She looked down at the key again, then back at the mansion looming behind the rain. You were always enough, was she. The drive home took an hour through traffic that felt like punishment. Lydia's apartment was a studio in a neighborhood her father would have called transitional, which meant rent was almost affordable and the bodega downstairs knew her by name. She dropped her bag by the door and sank onto her second-hand couch, still holding the envelope. Her phone buzzed. 12 missed calls. 8 texts. All from numbers she didn't recognize. Someone had already leaked the will reading to the press. She ignored them all and pulled out her father's note again, reading it over and over until the words stopped making sense. Why had he done this? In 38 years, he'd barely acknowledged her existence. Now he was giving her everything. It felt less like a gift and more like a puzzle she didn't know how to solve. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. Marcus Webb. Ms. Johnson, he said when she answered. I apologize for calling so late. I wanted to check if you were all right. I don't know how I am. That's understandable. This was a significant development. He paused. There's something else. Your father left additional materials for you. Documents, files, and recordings. They're extensive. I think it would be best if you came to my office tomorrow to review them privately. Lydia's stomach tightened. What kind of documents? She asked, sitting upright in her chair. That's not something I can discuss over the phone. But I will say this. Your father was very deliberate in everything he did. The will was just the beginning. After they hung up, Lydia sat in the dark, listening to the sounds of her neighborhood. Car horns. Distant music. Someone is arguing in Spanish 3 floors down. Normal life, continuing like her world hadn't just tilted sideways. She thought about the children she'd read to yesterday while her father was being buried. About Maria, who'd finally started reading chapter books on her own. About Jamal, who'd hugged her and said she was his favorite teacher. About all the small victories that had made her feel like her life had purpose. What was she supposed to do with an empire? She didn't want it. Didn't want the responsibility, the scrutiny, the weight of her father's legacy pressing down on her shoulders. She'd spent years building a life that meant something, that helped people, that felt honest. But standing in that conference room, hearing Greg's accusations, seeing Pamela's barely concealed rage, something had stirred up inside her. A small, defiant part of her had thought, why shouldn't I have this? Why am I less deserving? She'd spent her whole life being told she wasn't enough. Not ambitious enough. Not business-minded enough. Not the right kind of daughter for a man like Richard Johnson. Maybe her father had finally disagreed. Or maybe, whispered a darker thought, he'd had no choice. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, Lydia dreamed of walking through her father's mansion, opening door after door, finding rooms that stretched into infinity. In every room, her father sat at a desk, writing letters he never sent, making calls to a daughter who never answered. She woke at dawn, gritty-eyed and restless. Marcus's office was downtown, all glass and polish, the kind of place where even the receptionist looked like she belonged in a magazine. Lydia felt small in her jeans and a sweater, but Marcus greeted her warmly, leading her to a private conference room. Coffee, he offered. Please. He poured 2 cups from an expensive machine, then sat across from her. On the table between them sat 3 cardboard boxes and a laptop. Your father began preparing these materials about 18 months ago, Marcus said. Around the time he was diagnosed with the heart condition that eventually killed him. Lydia's breath caught. He was sick. He didn't tell anyone. Not even Pamela or Greg. He knew his time was limited, and he wanted to ensure certain things were in order. Marcus gestured to the boxes. These contain correspondence, business records, and personal journals. Things he wanted you to see. Why me? Why not Greg? He actually understands Dad's business. Marcus's expression softened. Perhaps that's exactly why. Your father made choices, Ms. Johnson. Some of them were difficult. Some of them he regretted deeply. But in the end, he trusted you with the truth. What truth? Instead of answering, Marcus opened the laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a video file, dated 3 months ago. Her father's face filled the frame, looking older than she remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Marcus stood. I'll give you privacy. Take as long as you need. The door clicked shut behind him. Lydia stared at the screen, at her father's frozen image, her finger hovering over the play button. Part of her wanted to leave, to walk away from whatever this was, to go back to her simple life where things made sense. But she pressed play. Her father's voice filled the room, strong despite the weariness in his eyes. Lydia, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and you know about the will. You're probably confused. Angry. Maybe you think this is some kind of sick joke. He leaned forward slightly. It's not. Everything I did, every choice I made to keep you at a distance, was to protect you. I know you won't believe that. I wouldn't either. But it's the truth. He paused, seeming to gather himself. There are things about our family, about my business, about the money that built our empire, that I never wanted you to know. Dark things. Dangerous things. I kept you away because I thought distance would keep you safe. But I was wrong. The moment I die, you become a target, whether you know the truth or not. So I'm going to tell you everything. Lydia's hands gripped the edge of the table. Greg and Pamela have been stealing from me for years. Millions of dollars, siphoned through shell corporations and offshore accounts. I've known about it for 18 months. I have proof, recordings, documents that would send them both to prison. His expression hardened. But it's worse than simple theft. They made a deal with some very dangerous people. People who want control of Johnson Technologies for reasons that have nothing to do with profit. Lydia felt cold spreading through her chest. I'm leaving everything to you because you're the only one I trust. You're the only one who hasn't been corrupted by this world. But I need you to understand something." Her father's eyes seemed to look directly through the screen into her soul. "Accepting this inheritance means accepting a war. Greg and Pamela won't stop. And the people they're working with, they won't either." He reached toward the camera, and the video shifted slightly. "In the boxes Marcus has given you, you'll find everything you need. Evidence, names, accounts, the full scope of what's been happening. And in Vault 847, you'll find something else. Something that changes everything." His hand moved away, and his expression softened, becoming almost tender. "I know I was a terrible father. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that every day I stayed away from you was the hardest decision I ever made. I loved you, Lydia. I always loved you. I just loved you too much to let them destroy you the way they would have if you'd been close." His voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved. But maybe, if you're strong enough, you can be the person I never was. Someone who does the right thing, even when it costs everything." The video ended. Lydia sat in silence, her father's words echoing in the empty room. Outside the window, the city moved on, oblivious. Inside, everything had changed. She wasn't just inheriting money or a company. She was inheriting a war. And somewhere in the walls, in the vault, in these boxes of secrets, lay the truth her father had died protecting. The truth that would either destroy her or set her free. The estate gates rolled open at dusk, when Lydia arrived back at the mansion. The motion sensors triggered by the key fob Marcus had pressed into her hand. Lydia's headlights cut twin tunnels through the fog that clung to the manicured lawn. She parked beside the service entrance, the one the caterers used for her 16th birthday party she hadn't been invited to. The side door still had the same brass knob, polished to a mirror by staff who didn't know her name. Inside, the air tasted of lemon oil and disuse. Motion lights flickered on, guiding her down the service corridor to the main hall. Portraits of Johnson's long dead tracked her progress. White men in charcoal suits, their eyes flat with entitlement. She was the first black face in the lineage, and the walls knew it. Lydia set her phone flashlight to low and climbed the grand staircase. The library waited at the top, double doors ajar like a mouth mid-sentence. She hadn't been inside since college. The room still smelled of pipe smoke and old money. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, rolling ladder frozen halfway up its track. Lydia knelt beside the lower left panel, the one with the faint scratch from her childhood fingernails. She pressed the knot in the wood. A soft click. The panel swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a crawl space no wider than a coffin. She crawled in on her knees, the journal from Marcus's office clutched against her chest. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam. The space smelled of cedar and forgotten summers. At the far end, a metal lockbox the size of a shoebox waited, its lid etched with the same crooked chimney doodle from her father's note. The box her father had supposedly kept for her. The silver key slid home. The lock gave with a reluctant sigh. Inside, a stack of letters bound with twine, a flash drive in a velvet pouch, and a Polaroid of her mother, young, laughing, pregnant, tucked into the topmost envelope like a pressed flower. Lydia's breath caught. She sat cross-legged in the narrow space and opened the first letter, dated the week after her 8th birthday. Lydia Bug, I watched you chase fireflies tonight from the study window. You caught one in your jar and let it go before I could reach the porch. That's the difference between us. You set things free. I caged them. Pamela asked why I didn't bring you to the gala tomorrow. I told her you had a stomach bug. Truth is, I can't bear the way they look at you. Like you're a mistake I haven't corrected. I won't let them teach you that. Stay small a little longer. Stay safe. Dad. The paper trembled in her fingers. She read on, each letter a breadcrumb through the years. She picked another. When she was aged 10, Greg asked if you could come to his robotics fair. I said no. He'll learn soon enough that invitations come with strings. Age 13, Pamela suggested that you go to a boarding school in Switzerland. I signed the refusal before she finished the sentence. Age 16, You won the citywide essay contest. I read it in the car outside the ceremony. The quiet revolution of kindness. I cried so hard that the driver pulled over. I never told you I was there. The letters grew darker after she moved away, with the thought that her father didn't love her. He wrote, "They're moving money. I see the patterns now. Offshore shells, inflated vendor contracts. Greg thinks I'm too busy to notice. Pamela thinks I'm too proud to admit I married a thief. They're both wrong. I've started mirroring their accounts. Every dollar they hide, I document. If anything happens to me, the trail leads to you, except you're far enough away to run." Lydia's knees ached against the wood floor. She unfolded the final letter, written 6 months ago. "The heart condition is real. The prognosis isn't. I have time, just not enough to fix what I broke. The flash drive has everything. Recordings, ledgers, the Dubai consortium that wants our AI patents to build surveillance drones for regimes that disappear people like your mother's family, once disappeared. I kept you out to keep you clean. I was wrong. Clean hands can't fight dirty wars. You'll have to get them filthy, Lydia. But you'll do it on your terms. The vault holds the original contracts, signed in blood. I never wanted you to see. Burn them or use them. Your choice. I was never ashamed of you. I was terrified for you. Forgive the distance. It was the only armor I could give you." She sat in the dark until the flashlight dimmed to a dull amber. The house creaked around her like an old ship settling into port. Somewhere downstairs, a clock chimed 10. Lydia crawled out, locked the box under one arm, and closed the panel with her hip. The library felt different now. Less shrine, more battlefield. She moved to her father's desk, the one place she'd never been allowed to touch. The center drawer was locked. The silver key fits here, too. Inside, a second journal, this one newer, its pages filled with cramped handwriting and marginalia. The first entry was dated the day after her college graduation. Lydia walked across the stage today. Social work, summa cum laude. Pamela clapped politely. Greg checked his watch. I stood in the back row and mouthed, "I'm proud of you," to a daughter who couldn't see me. They've accelerated the embezzlement. $47 million in the last quarter alone. I've hired private auditors. Off books. If I confront them now, they'll destroy Lydia to destroy me. Distance is still the only weapon I have. The entries chronicle the conspiracy in meticulous detail. Shell companies nested like Russian dolls, board members paid in stock options and silence, a consortium of foreign investors who wanted Johnson Technologies' facial recognition algorithms to track dissidents across 3 continents. Lydia traced her father's handwriting with one finger. Every margin held the same refrain, scrawled in fading ink. "I'll keep her out. Keep her safe." She closed the journal and looked around the room that had once loomed so large in her nightmares. The portraits still watched, but their judgment felt hollow now. Her father hadn't ignored her out of indifference. He'd built a moat of absence around her, brick by brick, while the castle burned behind him. Lydia was numb. She didn't know what to feel. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Marcus. She let it ring out. Then a text from him. Security feed shows movement at the east gate. 2 vehicles. Not staff. Lydia's pulse spiked. She slipped the journals and flash drive into her tote, the Polaroid of her mother into her blazer pocket. The lockbox she left. Too heavy, too obvious. She killed the desk lamp. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, silvering the Persian rug. Downstairs, the front door's alarm chirped once, disarmed from the outside. Footsteps. Measured. Familiar. Greg's voice carried up the staircase, low and conversational. Check the study first. He always kept the good stuff there. Lydia backed toward the rolling ladder, heart hammering against her ribs. The library had 2 exits, the main doors Greg was climbing toward, and the service stairs behind the false bookshelf. She chose the bookshelf. The mechanism was stiff, decades since a child's curious hands had worked it. She wedged her shoulder against the panel and pushed. It gave with a groan that sounded like a confession. Behind her, the library doors swung open. Greg's silhouette filled the frame, backlit by the hall sconce. "Lydia!" His voice was almost gentle. "We know you're here." She slipped through the gap as the bookshelf clicked shut behind her. The service stairs spiraled down into darkness, smelling of dust and old secrets. Lydia descended 2 steps at a time, the journals clutched to her chest like a shield. At the bottom, a narrow corridor led to the kitchen. From there, the service exits. From there, the night. She paused at the threshold, hand on the cool metal door. Above her, Greg's footsteps stomped the library rug. Slow, deliberate, the sound of a man who believed he already owned the house. The fog swallowed Lydia as she crossed the service courtyard, shoes silent on wet gravel. She didn't look back until the mansion's bulk dissolved into gray. Only then did she run, past the dormant fountain, through the side gate that was always left unlatched, down to where her sedan waited under the dripping magnolia. She drove with the headlights off until the main road, pulse drumming louder than the engine. The journals rode shotgun, the flash drive taped beneath the passenger seat. Her phone stayed dark. She'd powered it down the moment Greg's silhouette filled the library doorway. By the time she reached her apartment, the city was asleep. She triple-locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and spread the evidence across her coffee table like a deck of cards she hadn't asked to play. A lawsuit arrived at 8:03 a.m., at the doorstep, the next morning. Hand-delivered by a courier in a navy suit who refused to meet her eyes. Johnson et al. v. Estate of Richard M. Johnson. 30 pages of legalese distilled to a single accusation. Richard Johnson had been coerced, medicated, and manipulated into disinheriting his rightful heirs. Lydia read it twice. The second time, she laughed. Short, sharp, the sound of a woman discovering her own edges. She needed a lawyer. Not the kind her father kept on retainer. Someone who still believed courtrooms could be fair. Sophia Reyes answered on the 3rd ring. 32, public defender burnout turned solo practitioner. Office in a converted laundromat in Oakland. Lydia had met her once years ago, when Sophia volunteered for legal aid at the community center. "I can't pay what they can," Lydia said. "I don't want their money," Sophia replied. "I want their arrogance on record." They'd met that afternoon. Sophia's conference room smelled of bleach and printer toner. Her team, one paralegal fresh out of community college, one retired court reporter who worked for Coffee and Principal. Sophia slid the complaint across the table. "They're claiming undue influence and lack of capacity. Classic playbook. We counter with the competency evals and the video deposition your father recorded with Marcus. But Lydia," she tapped the desk with her index finger twice, "they'll use your absence as an edge, dragging it through the mud. Prepare for that." Lydia nodded. She'd spent a lifetime preparing, unknowing to her. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out, expedited, because Greg controlled the judge's campaign fund. Discovery requests flooded Sophia's inbox. Tax returns, employment history, and so on. Sophia's paralegal, Jamal, printed them in color and pinned them to a corkboard like crime scene photos. "They're building a narrative," he said. "The prodigal daughter who ghosted the family, now swooping in for the jackpot." "Let them," Lydia said. "Narratives can be rewritten." Nights blurred into strategy sessions. Lydia pored over the journals under a desk lamp, cross-referencing dates with the embezzlement ledgers. Sophia taught her to read between the lines of corporate filings. Jamal built timelines on butcher paper that crawled across every wall. The insults started small. An anonymous op-ed in the Chronicle. Charity worker or gold digger. A leaked photo of Lydia leaving the mansion. Captioned trespasser-in-chief. Then the phone calls, blocked numbers, heavy breathing, one that whispered, "Walk away or the kids pay." Lydia changed her number. Installed cameras at the community center. Slept with the flash drive on a chain around her neck. Confidence grew in increments. Every ledger entry she decoded, every lie she traced back to Greg's signature, felt like reclaiming a piece of the childhood they'd stolen. Sophia watched her transform, posture straighter, questions S. James. "You're not just defending the will," Sophia said one night. "Take out containers littering the table. You're becoming the real you. The one your father had seen that would be just fine without using his measures." The trial began on a Monday that smelled of rain and printer ink. Courtroom 4B, 3rd floor, Superior Court. Lydia wore the same navy suit she'd bought for her graduation, still the nicest thing she owned. Sophia's blazer had a frayed cuff. Greg's lawyer wore bespoke wool that cost more than Sophia's annual rent. Greg took the stand first. He looked born for it. Hair perfect, grief tailored. "Describe your relationship with the decedent," his attorney prompted. "My father was my mentor," Greg said, voice steady. "We spoke daily about the business. He relied on me for strategic decisions." Lydia. A pause, sorrowful. Lydia chose a different path. "We also spoke often, but it was clear she wasn't interested in the legacy." Sophia's cross was surgical. "You testified you spoke often? Here's a phone log from the last 6 months. 0 calls, Ms. Johnson. Care to explain?" Greg's smile didn't waver. "I meant metaphorically." The gallery tittered. The judge's gavel felt like a period. Pamela followed, pearls luminous under the fluorescence. She dabbed at dry eyes and spoke of Richard's declining health, his confusion in the final months. Sophia played the video deposition, Richard, lucid, detailing the will's intent. Pamela's composure cracked only once, when he said her name with the same disappointment he'd once reserved for Lydia. Lydia testified on day 3. She kept her hands folded, voice level. "Ms. Johnson," Greg's lawyer sneered, "isn't it true you hadn't seen your father in over a decade?" 12 years, Lydia said. "The last time he shook my hand and said, 'Take care of yourself.' I took that as permission to build a life he couldn't ruin." The courtroom stilled. Even the court reporters' fingers paused. They broke for lunch. In the hallway, a bailiff handed Sophia a manila envelope, delivered anonymously to the clerk's desk. Inside, a single USB drive and a post-it. "Play me." Sophia's eyes met Lydia's. "Could be a trap. Could be a lifeline," Lydia said. They found an empty conference room. Jamal plugged the drive into his laptop. A video file, time-stamped the night Richard died. The camera angle was low, hidden in a bookshelf. Richard sat at his desk, gaunt but alert. Greg and Pamela stood over him. "Greg, sign the codicil, Dad. Give me the company." "Lydia doesn't want it." Richard, "She'll get it over my dead body." Pamela, laughing, "That can be arranged." The footage was cut to black. Lydia's stomach lurched. Not coercion, threat. On the night he died. Sophia ejected the drive with steady hands. "This changes everything. But we can't use it yet. Chain of custody's a mess. We need to trace the source." Back in session, Greg's lawyer called his final witness, a psychiatrist who'd never met Richard, testifying to probable dementia based on medical records Pamela had conveniently provided. Sophia stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to reserve rebuttal evidence for tomorrow." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You'll need something substantial, counsel." "Oh," Sophia said. "We've got it." As the gavel fell, Lydia's phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She stepped into the corridor to answer. "Lydia Johnson?" A woman's voice. Hushed. "Check the flash drive from the mansion. File labeled insurance. You'll want to see it before tomorrow." The line went dead. Lydia rushed back in and went to Sophia. "We're not done yet." She dropped and whispered what she just heard to Sophia. Her head snapped up, eyes glinting with fresh home. She grabbed Lydia's arm and led her outside to where Jamal was pacing in the corridor. "We need your laptop now." Jamal nodded at Sophia and they went back to the conference room. Lydia's fingers shook as she slid the mansion flash drive into Jamal's laptop. The corridor outside courtroom 4B smelled of floor wax and adrenaline. Sophia stood guard at the door, one eye on the bailiff. The drive opened to a single folder. Insurance. Inside, a dozen audio files, each time-stamped. Lydia clicked the earliest. 2 years old. Pamela's voice, crisp through static. "She's a non-issue. Richard hasn't spoken to her in years. We keep her invisible. The board forgets she exists." Greg. "And if the old man changes his mind?" Pamela, laughing. "Then we change it back. Some doctors owe me favors." Lydia's stomach turned. She fast-forwarded the video. Her breath caught up in her throat as she grabbed her heaving chest. File after file, casual calculations of her erasure. A plan to forge medical records claiming Richard's early-onset dementia. A contingency to frame Lydia for embezzlement if she ever surfaced. The final recording, dated 3 nights before Richard's death, was the clearest. Greg. Once he's gone, we freeze her out. Leak that she coerced him. The charity angle sells itself. Greedy daughter preying on dying father. Pamela. And if she fights? Greg. Cold. Accidents happen. Community centers burn. The file ended. Lydia stared at the waveform until it blurred. Anger flared first. White hot. Righteous. Then relief. Cool and unexpected. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He'd been barricading the door while they picked the lock. Sophia closed the laptop. We play this tomorrow. The chain of custody's still shaky, but the judge can't unhear it. Lydia nodded. The recordings weren't just evidence. They were her father's last weapon, handed across the grave. That night, pressure arrived in waves. A brick thrown through the community center's window, spray-painted. Walk away. An email to every board member with doctored photos, Lydia photoshopped into a yacht, champagne in hand. A voicemail from Pamela, silk over venom. Settle, darling. No one wants this to get ugly. Lydia didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, transcribing the recordings by hand, each word a brick in the wall she was building back. Morning came gray and sharp. Courtroom 4B filled early. Reporters, board members, curious heirs. Greg wore confidence like cologne. Pamela's pearls gleamed under the lights. Sophia called Lydia to the stand first. Ms. Johnson, did you discover materials left by your father? I did. Lydia's voice carried. Audio files. Conversations between the plaintiffs planning to discredit me, and worse. Greg's lawyer shot up. Objection. Hearsay, lack of foundation. Overruled, the judge said. I'll hear it. Sophia cued the laptop. The courtroom speakers crackled, then Pamela's voice filled the silence. Accidents happen. Community centers burn. Gasps rippled. Pamela's hand flew to her ajar mouth. Greg's jaw locked so tight that Lydia heard the click. Sophia let the recording play. 3 minutes of meticulous betrayal. When it ended, the room felt vacuum-sealed. Ms. Johnson, Sophia asked, what did you feel hearing this? Lydia met Greg's eyes. Relief. My father didn't ignore me. He was keeping me alive. Greg's lawyer scrambled, demanding authentication, accusing tampering. Sophia produced the drive's metadata, the mansion's security logs showing Richard accessing the hidden compartment weekly. The judge's expression hardened. Cross-examination was brutal. You expect us to believe a dying man planted evidence like a spy novel? I expect you to believe the truth, Lydia said. It's louder than your objections. The judge adjourned for lunch. In the hallway, Pamela cornered her near the vending machines. You're making a mistake, she hissed. Drop this, and we'll give you 10 million. Walk away clean. Lydia stepped closer. I'm not walking away. I'm walking through you. Pamela's smile faltered. For the first time, Lydia saw fear. An afternoon session brought the board's CFO, Greg's witness, suddenly unavailable. Subpoenaed emails surfaced instead, showing Greg authorizing the offshore transfers. The tide turned in whispers and sidelong glances. Sophia rested her case. Greg's team looked shell-shocked. Then the judge cleared his throat. The court calls Pamela Johnson to the stand. Pamela rose slowly, pearls clicking like dice. Lydia's anxiety spiked. Pamela was a performer, mourning her best costume. One lie, convincingly told, could still sway the jury. As Pamela swore in, Lydia's phone buzzed in Sophia's briefcase. A text from Marcus. Vault 847 opened remotely at 4:12 a.m. Someone's inside. Lydia's blood ran cold. The vault held the original contracts, Richard's final leverage. If Greg had them. Pamela's hand touched the Bible. Her eyes found Lydia's across the courtroom, triumphant. Pamela's fingers brushed the Bible as if it were a prop she'd rehearsed with. She settled into the witness chair, spine straight, pearls catching the light like tiny accusations. The courtroom held its breath. "Mrs. Johnson," Sophia began, voice mild, "you've testified that you were your husband's primary caregiver in his final months. That he confided in you about the will." "Every detail," Pamela said, eyes glistening on cue. "He was frail, confused. He spoke of regrets, of wanting to make things right with Lydia. I encouraged it. Family unity, you understand." Sophia nodded, letting the silence stretch. "Yet in the recording we heard, you discussed eliminating Lydia from the picture. Which was it, devoted wife or devoted conspirator?" Pamela's smile didn't waver. A moment of frustration. Richard's illness made us all say things we didn't mean. Sophia turned to the judge. "Permission to treat the witness as hostile?" "Granted." The questions came faster now, surgical. Bank transfers Pamela claimed were household expenses. The board votes she'd forgotten attending. A charity gala where she'd introduced Greg to the Dubai consortium, captured on video, time-stamped. Pamela parried with practiced grief, voice trembling at the edges. Lydia watched from the plaintiff's table, noting the microtics. The way Pamela's left eye twitched when she lied, the same tell from childhood Monopoly games. Then Sophia pivoted. "Your Honor, we call Victor Hahn, former CFO of Johnson Technologies." Victor entered looking like a man who'd slept in his suit. Mid-50s, tie askew, carrying a banker's box like a confession. He'd been fired 6 months ago, officially for restructuring. Lydia had found his severance agreement in the mansion files, buried under Greg's signature. Sophia handed him a ledger. "Mr. Hahn, explain this account." Victor's voice cracked. "Cayman Shell, code-named Phoenix Rising." Pamela authorized monthly transfers, $750,000 each. Greg countersigned. "I flagged it as irregular. They told me to retire early or face charges for the irregularities I supposedly created." The gallery erupted. Pamela half rose, then sank back, pearls suddenly dull. Sophia played the final card, an email chain projected on the screen. Pamela to Greg, 14 months ago. Hans asking questions. "Move the Phoenix funds through the foundation gala. If he talks, we pin the Dubai deal on him." Greg's reply. "Done." Lydia stays the ghost. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order!" Lydia felt the shift. Power tilting, the air itself leaning toward her. Pamela's mask slipped. Beneath it, calculation turned to panic. Greg stared at the floor, shoulders curved inward. Sophia's voice cut through the chaos. "Mrs. Johnson, care to revise your testimony?" Pamela opened her mouth. I closed it. The devoted wife was gone. Only the architect remained. Lydia's empowerment surged. Quiet, steady, the kind that didn't need volume. She'd spent years being invisible. Now the spotlight burned, and she didn't flinch. But as the courtroom buzzed, doubt crept in. Her father had documented everything, yet never confronted them. Had he been protecting her, or preserving leverage? The journal spoke of love, but also of contingency plans. If they move first, release the vault. Was she his daughter or his failsafe? The judge recessed for the day. In the hallway, reporters swarmed. Lydia slipped into a stairwell, needing air. Sophia followed. "They're done," Sophia said. "We've got enough for a criminal referral." Lydia leaned against the concrete wall. He knew for years. Why wait until death to fight? Sophia's eyes softened. Some battles you can't win alive. He chose the one he could. Back in the deliberation room, Marcus waited with a new envelope, vault access logs. Someone had entered at 4:12 a.m., downloaded the original Dubai contracts, then wiped the camera feed. The intruder's keycard. Pamela's. Lydia stared at the printout. Pamela hadn't just embezzled. She'd stolen the final piece of Richard's insurance policy. The contracts detailed not just money, but tech transfers that could arm surveillance states. Pamela's endgame wasn't inheritance. It was the empire. Sophia laid a hand on her shoulder. The DA's office is ready to take statements. Embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud, maybe attempted murder if we tie the community center threat. Your call. Lydia looked at the logs, then at the courtroom doors where Pamela's silhouette lingered, pearls glinting like shackles. Press charges, and the family imploded publicly. Greg in cuffs, Pamela stripped of everything, the Johnson name synonymous with scandal. Let it collapse quietly, and the poison spread underground, maybe resurfacing later. Her father's voice echoed from the video. You'll have to get your hands filthy. Lydia folded the logs into her pocket. Set the meeting with the DA. But first, Pamela testifies again tomorrow. I want her to say it under oath. Sophia's grin was sharp. Thought you'd never ask. As they left the courthouse, Lydia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Pamela's voice, stripped of silk. You think you've won? The contracts are gone. Walk away, or the next fire won't miss. The line went dead. Lydia stared at the screen. Pamela had just confessed. On a recorded line Sophia had patched through the paralegal's burner. She turned to Sophia. Add threatening a witness to the list. Lydia's pulse hadn't slowed since Marcus's text. She stood in Sophia's cramped office, the city's first light bleeding through the blinds, painting stripes across the war room table. The missing vault contracts were a gut punch, but the digital trail, Richard's hidden partition, still burned in her mind. Greg thought he'd stolen the killing blow. He didn't know she held the blueprint. Sophia was already on the phone with the DA, voice low and urgent. Jamal printed the blackmail chain in triplicate, each page a landmine. Lydia stared at the clean Dubai code, her father's quiet rebellion against the consortium surveillance empire. If she could prove it was his work, not theirs, the embezzlement case became a footnote. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered the speaker. Lydia. Greg's voice, stripped of bravado. Meet me. Subbasement. Campus garage. 10 minutes. Come alone. Sophia's eyes widened. Lydia shook her head. We're not playing his game. But the line crackled. I have the contracts. The real ones. Do you want them or not? Lydia met Sophia's gaze. Trap or truth? She'd know in 10 minutes. The garage was a concrete cathedral, lit by flickering fluorescents. Greg waited beside a black SUV, manila envelope in hand. No security. No Pamela. Just the echo of dripping pipes. You came, he said when he saw her. You're holding my future. Lydia stopped 10 feet away. Hand it over. Greg's laugh was bitter. You still think this is about money? He tossed the envelope. It landed at her feet. Inside, the original Dubai contracts, ink smudged with Richard's annotations. Disaster response only. No facial wreck burn if compromised. Lydia's throat tightened. Why? Because Dad's ghost is louder than Pamela's threats. Greg leaned against the SUV, exhaustion carving new lines into his face. The consortium's closing in. They know you have the clean code. They'll kill to bury it. Lydia clutched the contracts. You could have destroyed these. I could have. Greg's eyes flicked to the shadows. But I'm tired of being the villain in his story. Headlights swept the ramp. Another SUV, tinted windows. Greg stiffened. That's not mine. Lydia backed toward the stairwell. You set me up. No, Greg's voice cracked. I warned you. The second vehicle screeched to a halt. Two men in dark suits emerged, moving with military precision. One raised a silenced pistol. Lydia ran. The stairwell door slammed behind her as muffled shots pinged off concrete. She took the steps 3 at a time, contracts pressed to her chest. Greg's footsteps echoed behind, running with her, not after. They burst onto the lobby level. Security guards scattered, radios crackling. Sophia's paralegal, Jamal, waited by the revolving doors, eyes wide. The car's running. Lydia dove into the back seat. Greg piled in after. Tires squealed as they peeled into traffic. Sophia twisted from the passenger seat. What the hell? Consortium hit squad, Lydia gasped. Greg's with us. For now. Greg stared out the window, jaw tight. They'll burn the campus servers by dawn. Everything digital, gone. Lydia pulled the contracts from her jacket. Then we go analog. They regrouped at the community center, shutters drawn, kids' artwork taped over bulletproof glass. Sophia laid out the plan. Emergency board vote at 9 a.m., before the final hearing. Lydia would present the clean code, the blackmail chain, and Greg's live testimony. The contracts were the smoking gun. Greg paced. They'll discredit me. Say I forged them. They can try, Lydia said. But Richard's handwriting is on every page. And you're not the only witness. She dialed Victor Hahn, the ex-CFO. He answered on the first ring. I'm already on my way. Bring coffee. Dawn broke gray and restless. The boardroom filled with suits, some loyal to Richard's memory, others to Pamela's purse strings. Lydia took the head seat, contracts stacked like armor. Courtroom 4B was packed, reporters 3 deep, cameras banned, but phones buzzing. The judge entered at 10:02, robes sweeping like judgment. Pamela sat ramrod straight, pearls replaced by a simple gold chain. Greg took the stand first, no longer plaintiff but witness for the defense. Sophia's closing was on fire. This isn't about a will. It's about a war Richard Johnson fought alone, to protect his daughter from the very people who now claim his legacy. She played the campus garage audio, Greg's warning, the silenced shots. Gasps rippled. Pamela's composure fractured. Greg's testimony was raw. I followed the blueprint. Dad taught me to win. I just didn't know the cost was my sister. Pamela's lawyer objected, voice cracking. Overruled. Lydia took the stand last. No notes. Just the truth. This empire was built on fear, she said. Fear of exposure. Fear of loss. My father paid that price so I wouldn't have to. I'm done paying. She laid the contracts on the rail. Richard's annotations glowed under the projector. For Lydia. For good. The judge's gavel fell at 11:47 a.m. Will be upheld in full. Counterclaims dismissed. Ms. Johnson retains sole control of Johnson Technologies and all assets. Furthermore, the court refers Pamela and Gregory Johnson to the DA for criminal investigation. The room exploded. Pamela lunged, restrained by bailiffs. Greg met Lydia's eyes across the chaos, relief, regret, something like respect. Relief lasted 30 seconds. In the hallway, Victor Hahn intercepted her. Campus servers are down. Consortium is wiping everything. We have maybe an hour before the clean code vanishes. Lydia's phone buzzed, board member texts flooding in. Emergency vote to sell to the Dubai group. They're offering triple. Half the board was flipping, spooked by the verdict's fallout. Sophia grabbed her arm. We need to lock the code behind open source licensing. Now. Or they'll bury it. Lydia looked at the splintering crowd, cousins whispering, Pamela being led away in cuffs, Greg signing autographs for reporters like a man reborn. Her family was a fault line. Some would follow her into the light. Others would dig tunnels beneath. She chose her side. Get me to the campus, she said. We're open sourcing the future before they can monetize the past. As they ran for the exit, a final text lit her screen, from an unknown number, consortium signature. The game's not over. See you at the Foundation Gala. Bring the girl who started Invisible. Lydia deleted it. The invisible girl was gone. The woman who'd inherited an empire was just getting started. Sirens faded behind them as Sophia's sedan merged into freeway traffic, the community center shrinking in the rearview. Lydia clutched the original contracts like a talisman, their edges cutting into her palms. The consortium's threat hung in the air. See you at the Foundation Gala. But for the first time, it felt like a promise she could keep. They reached the campus at noon. Security had been tripled, a private firm, loyal to Victor Hahn's whistleblower network. Servers hummed in the data center, firewalls reinforced overnight. Lydia uploaded the clean code to a public repository, licensing it under Creative Commons. By 12:47, disaster response NGOs worldwide were downloading it. algorithms for predicting floods in vulnerable neighborhoods, tracking wildfires in real time, all without the surveillance backdoors the consortium craved. The board's emergency sell-off vote crumbled. Shares spiked on the news. Johnson Technologies, reborn as a force for good. Pamela's allies resigned in droves. Greg's former supporters pledged allegiance to the new charter. Lydia stood on the executive balcony, city sprawl below, and felt the shift. Victory wasn't the gavel's echo. It was this: code in the wild, untouchable. Weeks blurred into restructuring. Lydia dissolved the shadowy subsidiaries, redirecting funds to employee equity programs. Board meetings opened to live streams. Decisions required community input. The Empire's glass tower gained murals, kids from her center painting scenes of resilience on the lobby walls. She fired the old guard gently, with severance that honored years served. Hired diverse talent, coders from HBCUs, ethicists from non-profit think tanks. Fairness wasn't a slogan, it was the baseline. Reclaiming power came in quiet surges. Lydia endowed the Johnson Justice Foundation with $500 million, seed money from liquidated offshore accounts, grants for black-owned startups, scholarships for first-gen college students, and legal aid for families facing deportation threats like her mother once had. The first gala was held at the community center, not a gilded ballroom. String lights over folding tables, kids serving hors d'oeuvres they'd helped prepare. Lydia wore a simple emerald dress, no pearls. She announced the foundation's flagship program, tech incubators in underserved neighborhoods, teaching AI for social good. Maria, once a shy reader, tugged her sleeve. "Miss Lydia, does this mean we get robots?" Lydia knelt. "Better. You get to build them." Personal victory settled deeper, away from spotlights. Evenings found her in the mansion's library, now her home office, reading her father's journals aloud to the empty room. His regrets became her roadmap. She visited his grave monthly, leaving dandelions. "You were wrong about one thing," she whispered once. "Distance didn't keep me safe. Truth did." Peace wasn't the absence of conflict. Threats still came, consortium ghosts in anonymous emails, Pamela's appeals from prison. But Lydia had allies now. Greg, testifying in exchange for reduced charges, rebuilding as the foundation's operations director. Victor Hahn is on the board. Sophia as general counsel. She mentored young women who looked like her, quiet, overlooked, fierce. "Your voice isn't small," she told them. "It's just waiting for the right room." A year later, Lydia stood on the gala stage, repurposed community center gym, banners reading code for the commons. The room buzzed with grantees, partners, and kids demoing flood prediction apps on tablets. She looked out at the family she'd chosen. Jamal, now Foundation CTO, Maria, interning in outreach. Even Greg, tie straight for once, clapping loudest. The old family. Splintered. Pamela is in a minimum security facility. Appeals exhausted. Distant cousins divided. Some invested in the new vision, others faded into obscurity. Lydia tapped the mic. "My father built an empire on secrets. We're tearing down the walls." Applause thundered. She stepped off stage, envelope in hand, Richard's final letter, unsealed tonight. "Lydia Bug, if you're reading this at the gala, you did it. I'm proud. Live loud. Dad." She smiled, tears blurring the ink. The invisible daughter was gone. The architect of tomorrow had arrived. And for the first time, destiny felt like home. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.